Short chapter coming now, and it's the worst of them all. I think it's speculative. It's a lapse from our usual pseudo-standards. I think it must mean that the preceding chapter was very efficiently done, and that now, by the rhythm of all quasi-things, which can't be real things, if they're rhythms, because a rhythm is an appearance that turns into its own opposite and then back again. But now, to pay up, we're what we weren't. Short chapter, and I think we'll fill in with several points in Intermediatism. A puzzle. If it is our acceptance that, out of the negative absolute, the positive absolute is generating itself, recruiting or maintaining itself via a third state, or our own quasi-state, it would seem that we're trying to conceive of universalness manufacturing more universalness from nothingness. Take that up yourself. If you're willing to run the risk of disappearing with such velocity that you'll leave an incandescent train behind, and risk being infinitely happy forever, whereas you probably don't want to be happy. I'll sidestep that myself and try to be intelligible by regarding the positive absolute from the aspect of realness instead of universalness, recalling that by both realness and universalness we mean the same state, or that which does not merge away into something else, because there is nothing else. So the idea is that out of unrealness, instead of nothingness, realness, instead of universalness, is, via our own quasi-state, manufacturing more realness. Just so, but in relative terms, of course, all imaginings that materialize into machines or statues, buildings, dollars, paintings, or books in paper and ink are graduations from unrealness to realness, in relative terms. It would seem then that intermediateness is a relation between the positive absolute and the negative absolute. But the absolute cannot be related. Of course, a confession that we can't really think of it at all, if here we think of a limit to the unlimited. Doing the best we can, and encouraged by the reflection that we can't do worse than has been done by metaphysicians in the past, we accept that the absolute can't be the related. So then, that our quasi-state is not a real relation if nothing in it is real. On the other hand, it is not an unreal relation if nothing in it is unreal. It seems unthinkable that positive absolute can, by means of intermediateness, have a quasi-relation, or be only quasi-related, or be the unrelated in final terms, or, at least, not be the related in final terms. As to free will and intermediatism, same answer as to everything else. By free will we mean independence, or that which does not merge away into something else. So, in intermediateness, neither free will nor slave will, but a different approximation for every so-called person toward one or the other of the extremes. The hackneyed way of expressing this seems to me to be the acceptable way, if in intermediateness there is only the paradoxical, that we're free to do what we have to do. I am not convinced that we make a fetish of the preposterous. I think our feeling is that in first gropings there's no knowing what will afterward be the acceptable. I think that if an early biologist heard of birds that grow on trees, he should record that he had heard of birds that grow on trees. Then let sorting over of data occur afterward. The one thing that we try to tone down, but that is to a great degree unavoidable, is having our data all mixed up like Long Island and Florida in the minds of early American explorers. My own notion is that this whole book is very much like a map of North America in which the Hudson River is set down as a passage leading to Siberia. We think of Monstrator and Melanicus, and of a world that is now in communication with this earth, if so, secretly, with certain esoteric ones upon this earth. Whether that world's Monstrator and Monstrator's Melanicus must be the subject of later inquiry. It would be a gross thing to do, solve up everything now and leave nothing to our disciples. I've been very much struck with phenomena of Cupmarks. They look to me like symbols of communication. But they do not look to me like means of communication between some of the inhabitants of this earth and other inhabitants of this earth. My own impression is that some external force has marked, with symbols, rocks of this earth from far away. I do not think that cup marks are inscribed communications among different inhabitants of this earth, because it seems too unacceptable that inhabitants of China, Scotland, and America should all have conceived of the same system. Cup marks are strings of cup-like impressions in rocks. Sometimes there are rings around them, and sometimes they have only semicircles. Great Britain, America, France, Algeria, Circassia, Palestine, they're virtually everywhere, except in the far north, I think. In China, cliffs are dotted with them. Upon a cliff near Lake Como, there is a maze of these markings. In Italy and Spain and India, they occur in enormous numbers. Given that a force, say, like electrical force, could, from a distance, mark such a substance as rocks, as from a distance of hundreds of miles, selenium can be marked by telephotographers. But I am of two minds. The lost explorers from somewhere, and an attempt from somewhere to communicate with them, so a frenzy of showering of messages towards this lost earth, in the hope that some of them would mark rocks near the lost explorers, or that somewhere upon this earth there is an especial rocky surface or receptor, or polar construction, or a steep conical hill upon which for ages have been received messages from some other world, but that at times messages go astray and mark substances perhaps thousands of miles from the receptor. That perhaps forces behind the history of this earth have left upon the rocks of Palestine and England and India and China records that may someday be deciphered, of their misdirected instructions to certain esoteric ones, Order of the Freemasons, the Jesuits. I emphasize the row formation of cup marks. Professor Douglas, Saturday Review, November 24, 1883. Whatever may have been their motive, the cup markers show a decided liking for arranging their sculpturings in regularly spaced rows. That cup marks are an archaic form of inscription was first suggested by Canon Greenwell many years ago. But more specifically adumbratory to our own expression are the observations of Rivet Carnac, Journal Royal Asiatic Society, 1903-515. That the Braille system of raised dots is an inverted arrangement of cup marks. Also that there are strong resemblances to the Morse code. No tame and systemized archaeologist can do more than casually point out resemblances and merely suggest that strings of cup marks look like messages, because China, Switzerland, Algeria, America, if messages they be, there seems to be no escape from attributing one origin to them. Then, if messages they be, I accept one external origin to which the whole surface of this earth was accessible for them. Something else that we emphasize, that rows of cup marks have often been likened to footprints. But, in this similitude, their unilinear arrangement must be disregarded. Of course, often they're mixed up in every way, but arrangement in single lines is very common. It is odd that they should so often be likened to footprints. I suppose there are exceptional cases, but unless it's something that hops on one foot or a cat going along a narrow fence top, I don't think of anything that makes footprints one directly ahead of another. Cop, in a station house, walking a chalk line, perhaps. Upon the Witch's Stone near Ratho, Scotland, there are 24 cups, varying in size from 1.5 to 3 inches in diameter, arranged in approximately straight lines. Locally, it is explained that these are tracks of dogs' feet. Proc Society, Antiquities, Scotland, 2-4-79. Similar marks are scattered bewilderingly all around the Witch's Stone, like a frenzy of telegraphing, or like messages repeating and repeating, trying to localize differently. In Inverness-shire, cup marks are called fairies' footmarks. At Valna's Church, Norway, and St. Peter's, Ambleteuse, there are such marks said to be horses' hoofprints. The rocks of Clare, Ireland, are marked with prints supposed to have been made by a mythical cow. Folklore, 21-184. We now have such a ghost of a thing that I'd not like to be interpreted as offering it as a datum. It simply illustrates what I mean by the notion of symbols, like cups or like footprints, which, if like those of horses or cows, are the reverse of, or the negatives of, cups, of symbols that are regularly received somewhere upon this earth, steep conical hill somewhere, I think, but that have often alighted in wrong places, considerably to the mystification of persons waking up some morning to find them upon formerly blank spaces. An ancient record, still worse, an ancient Chinese record, of a courtyard of a palace, dwellers of the palace waking up one morning, finding the courtyard marked with tracks like the footprints of an ox, supposed that the devil did it.